Good morning, everybody. Okay, we are working on the 24 ELU. We're about halfway through the first move after a couple of weeks. Hopefully, we're going to finish that move up today. So there are three sections to it. The first section are three Lee circles. The second section are two Shu circles, and the final section is one Ping circle. We're going to spend most of today working on that Ping circle, especially the footwork, but we will review the two other sections. So let's review the first section, the three Lee circles. And again. And one more. Forward, pong, lu, on. Pong, lu, on, chi. Pong, on. Pong, lu, on. Okay, let's go around the room and everybody do it. So I want you to do two of them. The first one facing the camera, the second one with your back to the camera. Annie, why don't you start? Good. I'm not actually watching her, I'm watching her on the video. Good. Okay. And Rudy. And Rudy, one with your back to the camera. Good. Good. All right. And Catherine. one with the back to the camera. Good. And yin yin. Good. And one with your back to the camera. Good. Okay, everybody did a good job. Let's go on to the second part of this. We haven't actually formally gone through this second part, so we'll do that now. I find this part rather simpler than the other parts, but we'll spend a little bit of time on it, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll work the whole rest of the session on the third part, especially the footwork. Right? So the second part, let me just demo it. Okay. So when you're doing the second part, make sure you finish the first part. So when you're finishing the first part, you sink once, and then you sink again. Ooh, to do the second part. The first sinking, is to finish the function of this. The second sink is to prepare, is to wind up for the next move. Boom. All right. So it's sink once, sink twice, and go. Okay. When you sink the second time, put more weight on the right leg. And in fact, you're going to move your hands a little bit to the left because we're going to go to the right. That's always in Tai Chi. You always do the opposite of what it is you intend to do, right? It's like you're going to hit a baseball in this direction, you wind up in the opposite direction. It's exactly the same reason, right? So we're going to go over here, but you start by going left in order to go right. However, it's your hands that go left, not your body. Your body, we might say your hips or your down chin, your quad, goes to the right. All right. Finish. I'm not even going to move my hands. A little bit to the right. All right? And your hips go a little to the right, but your hands go a little to the left. And then your hips, which are going to the right, now are going to pull your hands over. Now, what this really is it's the Dan Chen per se that's moving over to the right. Why?
Because it's getting ready to move to the left.
Well, it's getting ready to move over here, right? So watch me in the right. Why do I go to the right first? Remember, the Dan Chen leads. Now, when we're breaking it down like this, a little bit by little bit, it's a little unrealistic because nobody really moves like this. But you're going to move a little bit to the right because literally the Dan Chen is going to pull your hands over. My hands are very light. They're very gentle, right? So I finish this and I start this. And now when I'm ready up here, watch my Dan Chen. Right? It's ahead of the hands. It synchronizes with the hands, but it's half a beat ahead.
Half a beat ahead.
Right?
I experience it like a little bounce.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a little bounce.
A little bounce.
Right? In other words, it's not this. That now my hands are absolutely synchronized with my Dan Chen, right? It's not that. This is ahead, half a circle ahead. Watch. Now it's already over on the right when my hands are on the left. And now it's on the left when my hands are on the right. Now I'm sort of exaggerating this a little bit, but essentially that's what's happening.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It feels like it.
You think about if you're just dancing. There's two ways to dance. One is very fluid, one is very stiff and static. If you're absolutely synchronized, things get very static, very stiff looking. If you're just letting the different parts of the body flow, it's much more fluid. Catherine's got the right idea. Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Right? It's just remembering that what's really dancing is your whole body, not your hands, so to speak. Okay, so that's the beginning part of that. 1, 2, weight and Dan Chen to the right, but hands to the left, and then up.
All my weight's on the right at that point.
All your weight is on the right at that point, right? Even though at the height, watch my Dan Chen, at the very height, when I start to go the other way, the Dan Chen moves first. You could say it's pulling the hands. Pulling's maybe the wrong word. Leading. It's leading the hands. Now, there's two ways you can think about this motion up here. Is simply that it's kind of like a stop sign. Stop. In the name of love, right? So you stop, right? Now, the truth is there's a strike hidden in there. Watch. I'll do it really slow. Peng Lu G, right? So you, theoretically, you could do that strike. Now you don't do it, but you set it up. You could do it if you wanted. You're all ready to do it, but you just let it go, all right? There are lots and lots and lots and lots of places in this form where you set something up and then you just let it go.
Well, it could be a strike or a blessing.
Yes, it could be a blessing. My child, I bless you.
Or I bless you.
Right? But we'll just do it soft. Now, this next circle, Pong, Lu, An, Chi, right? It's just a straight circle. It's one of the straightest moves in the whole form. In old Chen style, in Chen Village Chen style, pre-Huanyan, this was a relatively small circle. We do it really big. Grandmaster Feng really does this move big. Bigger, I think, than it needs to be for martial purposes. So I call this circle his sun salutation. It's like he's doing a salutation to the world.
He's got arms that go on forever.
Grandmaster Feng had absolutely enormous arms, right? Annie and I, we went to a workshop in 2001 in Santa Cruz, in the hills up above Santa Cruz. And we happened to be walking behind Grandmaster Feng, about 30, 40 feet behind Grandmaster Feng, early in the morning as we were all going to the next session.
Sunrise June.
And I'm going to have to exaggerate to do this, but his arms hung all the way practically down to his knees. Yeah. Right? We were just looking at it. He looks like an orangutan. Right? He's just walking like this. Right? His arms are just amazingly long, and I didn't realize it. I just read the English translation of he and Master Zhang made a presentation at the beginning of the workshop for an hour or so. It's kind of a little talk, right? And Brian Guan translated it at that time live. So they'd say a paragraph and then he'd translate it. Well, the translations weren't literal. They were, just kind of the gist of what was going on. But later, Brian translated it into English word for word. And in the word for word translation, Master Zhang says, you've probably all noticed that Master Feng's arms are longer than everyone else's. Why is that? It's because he's practiced a certain practice. It's an arm lengthening practice. And he said he's practiced it for 60 years.
I have no idea.
Exactly. And his arms are truly longer. What the practice is just to relax the joints and relax the muscles and tendons. And just let everything flow. And by letting loose and just letting things flow, you actually grow in certain
having
ways.
Arms a lot longer than your opponent is very handy.
Exactly. Yes, it is very handy. All right. What it is a way of being aware of how constricted our bodies get. Yeah. We're working, we're typing, we're using a little saw or a hammer or whatever. We're kind of tense. And he would practice something that was just the opposite. So loose and extend yourself, relax, right? Anyway, he did end up with very long arms. Honestly, he looked like an orangutan from the back, seriously. Okay, this is what Master Feng looks like when he does this. There's nobody up there. This is not a martial move. That's a pure Qigong move. That's just saluting the sun, saluting the world, right? And I like that. I like that attitude. It's like as you begin, you're just saluting the world a little bit. Come here. Put your left hand in this hand. I'm sorry, your right hand. Your right hand. Just relax. Just stay right there. That's what you would be doing. Now, this is a Chinat. So I'm going to fake this because she'll hurt me otherwise. This hand is twisting because your Dan Chen is rolling. It's rolling under and twisting forward. Watch. Watch this. And that puts it into her. This hand rolls the other way because the Dan Chen can do two things at once. It's not the arms that are doing it, it's the Dan Chen. The arms are just like a almost passive drivetrain, right? Now, why do you need to know that? It's exactly the same as this. You don't actually do it. You could, but you don't. 99.999% of the time you don't do it. But you set it up inside, mentally and energetically. You could do it, right? But you just don't. It's the same with this. It's just very gentle. But inside you know what you're doing. It's set up. Watch my hands. That's the actual joint lock. It's a very gentle version of it. But what you're practicing is how to do it without doing it, if you see what I mean. How to do this without actually doing it. How to do this without actually doing it. Right? And then back and on top. Now, what are you doing here? Well, basically the same thing, all right? So you've just come around the other side and done it again, all right? To truly do Tai Chi, you should know those things so that when you are doing it, you are practicing for getting ready to do this.
It's informed.
So your form is informed, right? So we could say that's the second part of this move, right? One thing I forgot to say that I should have said. When you come down and the hips go right and the hands go to the left, you should step out with your left foot a little bit. And here's why. The beginning of the form, these three circles here, boom, 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 right? Those three circles, you're basically just standing there, right? Now, when you start to move sideways, you need a wider base, a wider foundation, because you're moving sideways. If you're moving sideways and your base is very narrow, it's a little trickier. So, I mean, you could easily lose your balance one way or another. So you want a little wider base so you can move from side to side and still stay upright. All right? if you're like this and really, really trying to move from side to side, but you have a very narrow, right? It's a little harder to stay upright. But if you open up a little bit, you can move from side to side and still stay upright. Sit down on your butt, sit down on your butt, sit down on your butt. And when you do that, things stay very steady.
And just to be clear, when we're doing the first 3 circles, even though our feet are more or less steady and parallel, we're still shifting our weight.
You're always shifting your weight,
constantly.
yeah. Annie reminded me to say, and you guys should all know this anyway from having done this before, but your weight is never 50-50. It's always shifting, right? Up on the right, down on the left. Up on the right, down and out on the left. Up on the right, down on the left. Up on the right, down, and then a little bit on the left, and then to the right, and then step out. And big circle, push through, and down, right? Let's go on to we've only got about 20 minutes left, so I want to go on to the next part. It's maybe not quite enough time, but we'll try to make it work. Okay, after you've pressed down, right, you press down all the way to the ground in your mind, boom. And when it hits the ground, it bounces back up. Press down, bounce up. Now you begin what we talked about yesterday, 45 degrees Lu across the body on the right side, and on the left side, it comes under and scoops up toward the center. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. They're real. I'm calling 1, 2, but really it's just 1, right? 1. 1. Right? Is it 1, 2? Well, yes, of course it's 1, 2, but it's actually one motion. You're catching the guy's fist as he tries to punch you, pulling it across the body, and at the same time you're coming up into his elbow, either to control his body or to break the arm. Very simple, okay? Now, there's one other little bit of detail we should talk about here, and that gets us into the footwork. My weight is on the left, right? I could lift my right leg. But watch what happens with my weight as I do this. It goes to the right. And in addition to your weight shifting to the right, once your weight is off the left foot, as you move from the left foot to the right foot, your body is going to, your weight is going to shift and your waist is going to turn. As your waist turns, lift your left toes and let the turning of your waist turn your foot in. When you have all your weight on the left foot, you can't turn that foot. You have to take the weight off and bring it around. The way to do this is very common in Tai Chi. The way to do it is just lift your toes, attach your foot or your toes to your waist, and as your waist turns, you just let your foot turn too. Very simple. That's the beginning of this footwork. So again, one circle, two circle, and down to the ground, bounce up and shift your weight. Now, why do you do that? Well, it's because, for a couple of reasons. First, it helps to power that move. Turning in like this lets you scoop a lot more vigorously, right? You can feel it. Bounce and scoop. So that's the reason you turn in, to help that function. But it also serves to begin to turn from this direction to this direction. The way you do that in Tai Chi is almost always in two steps. 45, 45, and there I am. All right? So let's talk about that shift. It's done by shifting your weight. Shift to the right and bring your toes into 45 degrees. Now shift your weight back to the left and open another 45 degrees and step up. Very simple. Two weight shifts. To the right, to the left, and then back to the right. So I guess we have to say three weight shifts. To the right, to the left, and back to the right. To the right, to the left, and back to the right. Shift to the right, to the left, and back to the right. To the right, to the left, and back to the right. So it makes the shifting 90 degrees very simple, and if you're coordinating it well with the upper body, it's absolutely seamless, right? One, two. Now I counted out 1, 2. What did I mean? There's two functions, two martial functions, and the footwork coordinates with those two functions perfectly. Here's one, boom. Here's two, boom. Now the second one looks very simple, and it is really. Let me do it. I'm going to do it so that when I'm done, I end up facing here. So I'm going to have to face Annie to start. 1, 2, 2, 2. All right? That's a joint lock. Boom. Very simple. Boom. All right. So Annie's just going to stand here. Now, remember, these are not actual applications. This is the form. The form and applications are different. All right? So nobody's going to stand there and wait for you to grab them. But if I happen to have the chance to grab her, I could move in. Boom. that's the next move. I've got her hand, I've got her upper arm. That's done here. Then you wrap your leg around her and throw her over backwards. All right? Or throw him over backwards. Or throw it over backwards. All right? So those are the bits and pieces of this. Now when you're done, your weight should be, all their weight should be on the right. You could lift your left foot because you're going to get ready to do this. Boom. But you should be very well balanced and very comfortable. Okay, are there any questions about the material we just covered today? Okay, let's try the whole first move, at least as I defined the first move. Okay, I'm going to do one more with my back to the camera. All right, let's go around the room. We don't have time to each do it twice, but let's each do it once facing the camera. So Annie first. Good. All right, and Rudy. Good. All right, and Catherine. Okay, and Yin Yin. Good. Okay, we're going to finish by watching a little 30-second video. This is a video of Chen Shang back in '96. You remember Chen Shang?
Yeah.
This was when he was young and plump, and is Master Feng's last great disciple. I can't remember the name in Chinese, but there's actually a name for that because it's very common for a master to have, for some reason, one last great disciple. So the first disciple and the last one are always kind of exceptional. But before we watch this, I want to say something about what we're doing. Tai Chi is a science. It's an observational science. It's not a religious dogma. It's based on essentially coaches and athletes figuring out what it is they are actually doing that's effective, and then incorporating that within the tradition, and then you pass that on to the next generation. And this has been going on for 500 years or so. It's also an art. So like music or visual art or something, it can rise to that level.
It's a personal expression.
It's an art of personal expression. Yeah. And everybody does every form their own way, period. And the more you get to know the lineage, and this is true for any Tai Chi lineage, the more you realize, oh, it's very individual. Yeah, there's kind of a standard, but it's like people kind of move around that standard a lot. When you teach it, like we're in a teaching situation here, you try to establish a standard and stick to it, right? Not because the standard is sacred, but just because you need a standard of some kind, right? But as you get better, it will become yours. And it will be marked with your individuality. There's no other way to do it. That's what an art is. And so it will become less standard and more you. Now there's a third aspect of this that we haven't talked about that is equally important, in fact maybe more important, especially when you're learning, and that is it is a craft. It is a craft, like woodworking, like any craft, like ceramics. To make something really beautiful, you must become a good craftsperson. So if you happen to be for instance, a bookbinder, right? Bookbinding is one of the great crafts that are out there. Look at Tim Ely, our friend Tim, who is an excellent craftsperson. Is he also an artist? Yes. Is there a science to it? Yeah, there is. All right? But it's, in a certain way, it's first and foremost a craft. So when we're going through these moves, point by point by point, that's about learning the craft, about how you need to hold the nail and hit the hammer on the nail head, right? Versus some other thing. Now, we're going to watch a little video of Chen Shang. Chen Shang already, by this time, is doing the 24. We're just going to watch him do the first two moves. Not to learn about the moves, but to learn something about craftsmanship. He had absorbed the science. He had already, he's making it an art, and his craftsmanship is very good, but it's very different from what we're doing. It's much, much much more advanced. And what happens when you lift your craftsmanship to that level is it frees you up. You become free to express yourself. When you start, man, you gotta toe the line. You gotta keep your nose on the grindstone and really do the standard. Learn, 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 learn. But it's in service of eventually freeing yourself. All right. So hold on. Let me cue this up and we'll watch it. This is Kevin. We're going to watch a couple of minutes of that video you sent today. Now I'd already seen that video. I love this video. This video was taken. You don't see him in this video, but Master Fung is also there. This was a little workshop that happened in some corner of Beijing. I mean, it's out in the woods, literally. This is the way real teaching used to happen, and it's really interesting to see it this way. They're literally out in the woods, and they're teaching, and Chen Shang is doing a demonstration of the first part of the 24, and then Grandmaster Feng does a form, and then they do some push-ins. So they're just teaching this crowd of guys that are there. So hold on a second.
For those of you who don't know, Chen Shang actually came to the Guan in San Francisco, and it's very interesting to watch him and how he progressed from '96 till when he came. He also did a martial art called Baji, which is pretty impressive if you've ever seen it.
We're not going to watch him do the whole thing.
Do it again. Let's watch it again.
Watch it again. Watch
his belly.
Watch his belly.
Like it's got a big snake in there. It's his belly and his spine are so active.
Very active. So Annie just said it's like he's got a snake inside, right? That's what Master Zhang always used to say. As you got a little better, he would not I mean, he might say it to you individually, but he was saying it to the class. He would say, "Inside, you big snake, you big snake inside." He meant like a boa constrictor or something. Now that was Chen Xiang is our age, so he's like 70 years old now. That in that video he would have been like about 38 years old, so he was still young enough to really let it fly. But you notice how loose he was. Very loose. Right? You can be loose once you've got the craft of it. But learning the craft takes time. How did he learn the craft? Because he was working one-on-one with Master Feng for years, probably 10 years or so. And to work on anything for 10 years, you ought to get decent at it, right? But if you get to work with the master for 10 years, if you get to apprentice with the master for 10 years, you're going to be farther along than if you didn't get to work with the master for 10 years, right? So I was lucky. I got to work with Master Zhang for 15 years, right? Now, there was a public class, but I did private lessons with him twice a week for 2 hours. 2 hours each lesson. So I did 4 hours a week directly with him. In addition, we did about 12 hours of classes, public classes a week. And then I practiced every morning for 2 to 3 hours. So I was doing 24 to 28 hours of Tai Chi every week for about 12 years or so, right?
Or more.
Or more, right? That's the only way you can absorb everything. If you're going to be a good woodworker, you've got to do woodworking every day, all day. If you're going to be a bookbinder, you've got to bind books. You can't just talk about it. Right? You have to actually do it. And the process of learning is slow, particularly at the beginning. You just do 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? But if you get that foundation in place, then you can build, then you have something to build on. If you don't have that foundation, you may think you know what you're doing, but it's not perhaps as good as it could be. So the real thing about learning a craft is to find the best teacher you possibly can and then dedicate yourself to it. And realize that at the beginning it's slow. It's slow. It's step by step. But that's okay. All right? Because you're building that foundation. And if you do that for about 2 years or so, then you can move on to the next level and it starts to go faster and faster and faster and faster until you reach the speed of light and explode into a sun of accomplishment, right? So it's just slow.
And on that note.
And on that note, right, we will stop for today. We'll pick it up again next week.
Next Saturday.
All right. If you're going to stay for the advanced class, give me 10 minutes or so to combobulate myself again. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, guys. Ciao.
See you guys.